What is up, guys? Rick Cactus here, and today, with the November faction rally fast approaching, we are going to take some time and break down all three of the faction prize weapons for this upcoming week to determine which one is the best in a PvE environment and which one is the best potentially for PvP. Doing so will hopefully help you guys determine which faction to align yourselves with and which faction to spend the most time in to hopefully achieve that W and get that certain prize weapon. Now, before we begin, full disclosure, what I am planning to do for this faction rally personally is to have all three of my characters aligned with each of the three different factions. I hope to grind each faction to get the vendor weapons, and then after that, I will definitely spend the most time on whatever character is within the faction I want to win the faction rally. And I would encourage you guys to do the same. If you have multiple characters, do not pledge multiple characters to one faction just to make it win. It's much better to get those different vendor weapons, and if the faction you didn't want to win actually does win, at least you will have a character that can go and pick that prize weapon up for 1,000 glimmer instead of 50,000 glimmer, which is definitely a steep cost. Alright, so let's break down each of these three different weapons. Although they aren't currently in the game, they are in the game's database, so we know their stats and their perks, and can say with very good accuracy where these weapons will fall in the scale of usefulness. So let's start off the bat here with a very interesting weapon, what a lot of people are hyped up about, the Honor's Edge Legendary New Monarchy Sword. Now, the perks of this weapon are firstly adaptive frame, well-rounded and reliable, used to launch an uppercut attack, so that's your heavy attack for this sword. Next up we have tempered edge, increased sword damage and ammo, or we have jagged edge, increased damage at the cost of sword ammo. After that we have burst guard, sword guard has low efficiency and high defense, or we have Enduring Guard. Sword Guard has high efficiency and low defense. The last perk of this weapon is On Guard. Quick attacks immediately after swapping to this sword do additional damage. Alright, moving on to Future War Cult. Their prize weapon is the Timelines Vertex Legendary Fusion Rifle. This fusion rifle is in the lower impact damage category, with a charge time of 660 and an impact of 70. Comparing this to a very well-known popular fusion rifle, the main ingredient, that has a charge time of 740 and an impact of 80. So that's going to be doing more damage and taking longer to charge compared to the Timelines Vertex. We've also got relatively lower range and stability to account for this faster charge time. Now, moving on to the perks, firstly we have adaptive frame, a well-rounded grip, reliable and sturdy. After that we have two different sights, Spark PS, Omolon Post Sight, short zoom, slightly increases range, increases handling speed. Or we have Torch HS3, Omolon Red Dot, medium zoom, greatly increases range, slightly decreases handling speed. Next up we have two different choices between firstly Enhanced Battery, strong battery life, increases magazine size, or we have Accelerated Coils, speeds up charge, faster charge time, decreases impact damage. And then lastly, we have the perk Snapshot Sights, faster time to aim down sights. Now, moving on from there, we have the last prize weapon with the Truthteller Legendary Dead Orbit Grenade Launcher. This is a single shot grenade launcher. There are not many other legendaries, with the most notable other one being the Flash and Thunder Legendary Grenade Launcher. Well, how does this new Dead Orbit one compare to the Flash and Thunder? Well, the rounds per minute and blast radius are exactly the same, but the Truthteller actually has worse velocity, worse stability, a little bit more reload speed, and a little bit better handling. The only other notable thing is that according to the stats, the Flash and Thunder has an inventory size of 60 and the Truthteller 65, so you may be able to squeeze one more round into your Truthteller. In terms of reserve ammunition, of course. Now the perks of the Truthteller are as follows. Firstly, lightweight frame. One-shot handheld grenade launcher with remote detonation. Hold to fire, release to detonate. Next up we have confined launch. This weapon's launch parameters are particularly stable, greatly increases stability, increases blast radius, decreases projectile speed. Or linear compensator. Slightly increases projectile speed, slightly increases blast radius, slightly increases stability. Lastly we have hard launch. Greatly increases projectile speed, decreases stability, and slightly decreases blast radius. We then have two choices of, firstly, concussion grenades. Grenades fired from this weapon emit a blast that staggers enemies. Next up, black powder. This weapon's explosives are more effective, slightly increases blast radius, decreases stability. And lastly, we have quick draw. This weapon can be drawn unbelievably fast. And so, we've examined all three of the prize weapons. Which one is most likely to be effective in PvE? Well, it's really between Future War Cult and New Monarchy, with the sword and the fusion rifle. Now, while the Truthteller grenade launcher's concussion grenades perk is rather interesting, guaranteeing that stagger on enemies and preventing them from damaging you or your teammates, I question its effectiveness. You're giving up a lot of damage output just to stagger, and quite frankly, if you're using a powerful weapon like a 6-shot grenade launcher or a rocket launcher, the stagger caused by just the sheer damage output is almost always guaranteed as well. Those, of course, have the advantage to kill enemies much easier with one or few shots, whereas the Truthteller certainly does not. However, in terms of the other two, swords and fusion rifles both belong to the power slot, well, so does the Truthteller, and they have both been rather effective in PvE environments. Fusion rifles have been pretty darn good at DPSing more powerful enemies and just with taking out normal enemies, shielded enemies, and so on. Swords, although they maybe don't see as much play as they frankly I believe should, they are still quite effective. You have to play rather aggressively, standing right next to enemies to actually kill them, but they output a lot of damage and they are extremely ammo efficient. The amount of enemies you can kill with a couple of boxes of power ammo with a sword I think is more than most other power weapons. However, the biggest problem with the Honor's Edge is that its perks aren't really tailored for PvE, especially when we compare it to the Raid Sword, which is absolutely phenomenal. That sword has perks where doing damage on a single target over and over again will increase damage as you hit them more and more, obviously fantastic against powerful enemies like strike bosses even, and it also has a perk where consistent hits on an opponent will give you ammo back. Phenomenal in PvE. So the Raid Sword eclipses the Honor's Edge by leaps and bounds. If you have both swords, I can't imagine you ever wanting to use the Honor's Edge over the Raid Sword in a PvE environment. That's the problem there. As for the fusion rifle, the Timelines Vertex, its perks also don't really lend it for PvE play. When we compare that to a more popular option, the main ingredient, that weapon is doing more damage and it has Rampage, where getting kills temporarily grant increased damage, stacks up to 3 times. That is phenomenal in PvE. So both of these weapons just aren't, at the end of the day, going to shine in PvE compared to what we already have. However, when we just compare these 3 weapons to each other, which one comes out on top in PvE? Well, firstly, you can discount the Truthteller. It's just not a very great weapon in PvE. Most grenade launchers aren't, and this is one of the worst grenade launchers with being single shot. So it's really between the Honor's Edge sword and the Timelines Vertex fusion rifle, and I think it's rather close. A fusion rifle overall is probably easier to use. We know every single boss in Destiny 2 slams the ground and sends you flying, and so having a sword in those scenarios can be rather frustrating. A fusion rifle, you can shoot enemies from afar even if it doesn't do its maximum damage. And the extended battery perk is very good in the Timelines Vertex. However, at the end of the day, I think the best PvE weapon here is the Honor's Edge legendary sword. The Vertex really doesn't have anything special about it when compared to other fusion rifles. Its damage archetype maybe even isn't the greatest, but the Honor's Edge, having that on guard perk that increases damage, does have a lot of utility in PvE. You can very easily be using other weapons, wait for those close range engagements, and then switch to the Honor's Edge doing a damage bonus, which is definitely better than your average sword that doesn't have that perk. Now moving on from there, in terms of PvP, again I think you need to discount the Truthteller. It's so similar to the Flash and Thunder, which sees basically no play. I can't imagine the Truthteller would be good. Now with that being said, hating on grenade launchers is kind of a meme right now, but they're actually pretty decent. Something like the play of the game with proximity detonation is really effective. But the Truthteller just is on the worst end of grenade launchers is again the problem. So again, it comes to the Honor's Edge versus the Timelines Vertex. I think here it's purely personal preference. If you do like swords, you may like the Honor's Edge. I think there's better PvP options. The Quick Fang comes to mind, and that on guard may actually come up more than you think. There's a lot of scenarios where if you're standing on a healing rift, or if you have an overshield from a Titan melee, for example, that you have more health than usual, and so you getting a damage bonus over what's normal could be effective. But other than those special scenarios, it doesn't really do anything super special. The Timeless Vertex, on the other hand, Snapshot Sights is a legitimately good PvP perk, and if you do enjoy these faster charging fusion rifles, heck, you can get this to charge even faster with accelerated coils. The combination of an extremely fast charging fusion rifle and snapshot sights is something that shouldn't necessarily be overlooked. That's quite effective. But that is kind of, again, if you do enjoy those faster charging fusion rifles. Personally, I'd probably stick with my main ingredient. It's extremely effective, it's got the range advantage way over the Timeless Vertex, and so that's the problem with it there. And so, at the very end of the day, which faction should you align with? Which prize weapon should you go after? Well, to be quite honest, the Honor's Edge has got the meme potential. It's the sword. Swords are cool, we all know that, so I feel like a lot of people are going to be going for the Honor's Edge, and quite frankly, its perks, I mean, there is better swords out there, but it's certainly not a bad weapon. The Timeless Vertex is something that shouldn't be overlooked. It doesn't fall into a fantastic archetype, but it does have some neat stuff going on. I think either Future War Cult or New Monarchy are totally legitimate choices for weapons that I would be happy to get at the end of the day. Dead Open, on the other hand, unfortunately, the Truthteller has very little utility in PvE or PvP. So I hope this video has kind of informed you guys, helped you potentially make a choice into which faction to align yourself with. If you guys enjoyed the video, found it informative, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.